That was really useful, and I think it also shows as well how we can all approach personal brand quite differently, how it can apply differently, whether that's pivoting into a new role, whether that's a digital personal brand that Diane mentioned in terms of LinkedIn, whether that's career progression. There's so many different parts of personal branding. So yes, there's certainly a lot that we can get stuck into today. So I've got some slides prepared, which should only be around, say, 15-20 minutes. And then I want to leave plenty of time for any questions or any kind of, creative thinking, or if people want to kind of bounce ideas off me, that's absolutely fine. So yeah, looking forward to getting stuck in. So a bit of background on me. So Georgina Gill, I work in a client-facing role at a company called Data Art, which is a technology consultancy, and we focus primarily, the full software engineering umbrella, but primarily a lot around data. Data is a very strategic focus for us. And for the past 10 years being in client-facing roles, this has meant that I've really understood the importance of personal branding. So this is something that I'm very passionate about, something that I'm really interested in. I think the psychology of it all is really quite interesting. So yes, I'm looking forward to getting stuck in. So I will share my screen, which hopefully you can now all see.
Yeah, we've got you.
Great. So, a little overview of what we're going to cover. So firstly, I mean, what is personal brand? Why does it matter? What you can pull on as well in terms of, what strengths that you already have that you can look to improve your personal brand. Maybe, whether that's something completely different that you pivot to as well. Both are of equal importance. The power of networking, of course, you're all here today, so you're already one step ahead on that side of things. Advocating for yourself, and some really classic communication principles, which actually can very often get lost. So yeah, so I will move on to the first slide. So firstly, what is personal brand? And as we kind of covered in the intros, personal brand can be a lot of different things. I think the classic way that personal brand is thought of is around, thought leadership, online presence, how you show up digitally, perhaps your LinkedIn profile, or thought leadership, so maybe around published articles, etc., which are both extremely important and a real, significant slice of personal brand. But what it also is reputation. It's how you're viewed, it's how you're perceived, what others say about you when you're not in the room, and also about authenticity, because we're all showing up at work, and although there may be slightly a bit of a work persona there, it's also who you genuinely are and how much of yourself that you bring to work. And personal brand is something that we all have, whether it's a conscious decision, whether it's something that we're actively working on, or something we're trying to improve or create. Personal brand is something that we all already have. We already have a perception within the business, within the industry or the network that we operate in. So it's really, how can we build on that? How can we utilize it, and how can we improve it as well? So why it matters. So the better your personal brand, the better the easier life can be in some ways in terms of career opportunities. So that can be who you know. That can also be opportunities, internal opportunities that you may be put forward for or suggested for, that maybe you haven't thought yourself, this is something that is for me, but that others can perceive and say that actually this person would be a great fit for this opportunity. something that is much broader than your role, so much broader than the tick box exercises of, this is what I'm required to do in my role, but things that are extra to that, that can really build on how you can accelerate your career and how others perceive your value. So, in terms of your unique value, so I think we all think of personal brand and we think of how we can add things to our CV, how we can improve, courses that we can take, experience that we can add, etc., which is all fundamentally really important stuff. Absolutely. But what can often be missed with personal brand is, what is your USP? What is your unique selling point? What is a fundamental part of your personality or skill set, or the experience that you've brought from other roles if you've pivoted into a new industry or pivoted in a completely different role altogether, that actually means that you're bringing unique skills into your role that others don't have. And this can often be massively overlooked. I think we can very easily kind of underplay where previous experience and certain traits are valuable, when actually that's something uniquely that we add to the team that we can really build upon. So something that I'd really ask of you all today is to think of, what makes you different, and whether that's from people in your team, whether that's from people in your industry, within the business, what makes you different. And this can even be something that maybe you perceive it as a negative thing, that it's not necessarily negative. For example, if you're more introverted, I think that can often, sometimes we can perceive that in ourselves as a negative thing. And it's not. That could mean that you are more introspective. It could mean that you think a lot more before you speak, that you make a very informed answer or informed idea that perhaps others actually look upon and think that was really considered and that was really significant. So I'd love us all to have a think about what that might be in us, and how we can build on that and really utilize that to show our unique value and apply that to our personal brand. So building on what I've just said, so this might be something that actually comes easily to you, and that does not mean it's not a skill. So whether you are an analytical person, you might be very decisive. Lots of people struggle with making decisions. You may be extremely decisive. You might be a people person. You might make it very easy for people to trust you and for people to warm to you. That's a really important skill. You may be creative, you may be a perfectionist, so perhaps things should get to you for final sign off over anyone else. I think these are things that, although they're innate to us and it's something that we haven't necessarily worked on as something that we've perceived as valuable, it still is a skill, something that comes naturally to us. And I think we've just really got to pull on these individual skills and how we can apply this. Not everyone has got the qualities that we each have. We're not all a perfectionist and a people person and creative and analytical, etc. No one is all of those things. So that means that we can provide something that other people in the team cannot. So that's something to really think about and really build upon. So yeah, I guess this slide just kind of confirms what I've just mentioned. Really try and utilize it and make your strengths visible. So whether that is creative thoughts, like perhaps Diane mentioned around LinkedIn, perhaps you may want to post around thought leadership on LinkedIn. Really make that visible and part of your personal brand, part of your online brand. Maybe whether that be a newsletter, for example, to people in your network. If building trust with people or being a people person is something that is your strength, then being part of more networking groups, for example, particularly if you're based in London, so many different networking groups, or if just generally if you're in a big city, or if not, we're a case in point for online right now that can add value. So once you've decided on, okay, actually, I think these are some qualities that I have that maybe I'm not utilizing well enough, maybe I'm not making them visible enough. So then I would urge you to look at those qualities and then look at, okay, how can I utilize those? So as I mentioned, whether that's LinkedIn, networking events, newsletters, putting yourself forward within the business to present, for example, or to own an idea. There's so many, it's endless where you can go from each individual quality. And then so on to the power of networking. So we've all obviously heard the phrase of it's not what you know, it's who you know, which to some extent is true and also not true. And your network is an extension of your brand. I think it's very easy to, once we are in a job, to see networking as purely an internal thing, which of course is very important. But I think, you never know what's going to happen. You never know what changes are going to happen, both in your business and other people's business, etc. So networking is always valuable, and I think it's something that people don't utilize enough. And maybe set yourself a personal KPI of I'll go to one in-person networking event every 6 months, or maybe that's what's manageable for you, maybe more, maybe online things. We've all got different commitments and different lives, so it's not always the easiest thing, but you never know what introductions people can make, when you might need someone's expertise, when they might need your expertise. And I'd also just add on, networking is a two-way thing. So giving value is always significant. So I think we all know that, of course, with networking, it can be quite, in some ways, quite passive. And I think that can often be where the value is found, that you're not trying to look for, an introduction, or trying to look for a job or something like this, but trying to give the value of getting to know people and then building on that relationship when the time is right. So another area separate to that I wanted to cover was advocating for yourself. So I think we're probably all aware of areas that we do in our job that are outside of what is, the tick box of what is required for us. And it's really important to make that visible, because no one is going to advocate for you as much as yourself. So it's really important to advocate for yourself and to highlight and to repeat where you have added value. Don't forget the extra things, whether that's mentoring, if you're part of this mentoring group, whether that's contributions to business culture, whether that's side projects, whether that's helping with company brand visibility, as well as your own personal brand. And so to really track this throughout the year. It's similar to when people say to track on your CV, achievements that you've had. It's also important to do this internally. So we can very easily forget. We're all busy, we've got demanding jobs. It's easy to forget, all these additional great things that we've done. So track it, keep it somewhere, and present it back to your leaders, whether that's your performance review or etc. And it just shows and kind of reinstates in their mind the value that you're bringing, the unique value that you're bringing throughout your journey, aside from what you're required to do. And then communication principles. I think sometimes communication can be a difficult thing, particularly we are in a increasingly digital world, and things can be perceived in different ways. I think, I've written here, be kind, be concise, be direct. Clarity is the most important thing that I see in communication, and being concise and being clear, I feel relate very much to each other. So if you're respecting others' time, if you're being concise, if you're getting straight to the point, that creates confidence in you. It also shows that you really know what it is that, the conclusion that you've come to, the evidence that you have, etc. Is really important. So that's a small part of the overall brand building. But it's very significant, and particularly with things like LinkedIn and digital personal brands, being really clear as to what you're trying to get across is extremely important. I'm sure we've all seen these posts that are really, really long, that are kind of going all around the houses. And that's not me saying that storytelling is not of extreme value, because it absolutely is, but really being clear as to, tying up a post to say, maybe a statement at the beginning, bringing it all around at the end, and just making it super, super clear, so that anyone reading it would understand. And then just building on that, in terms of the repetition that we mentioned earlier, it's said from studies that people often remember 20% of what you've actually said. So with me building on advocating for yourself, saying what you've done that is extra, posts, being concise, being clear, that's even more important when it comes down to people remember 20% of what you've said. So with that in mind, coming towards the end of the presentation, if you take away any 20% from this conversation, these are the takeaways that we have. So think about what makes you unique, own it, build upon it, decide where you can go with these qualities that you already possess, as well as the additional growth and training that you might be pursuing. But really look into, be reflective and build on that. Network with intention, whether that be online, whether that be in your LinkedIn network, whether that be in person. Networking is extremely important. Advocate for yourself, be clear, be concise, and remember that people remember how you made them feel, rather than what you've said, which of course in a work environment cannot always be something that we be led by, but it's still extremely important for your personal brand, in terms of, particularly in the kind of networking environments, and digital environments, all extremely important as to what you make someone reflect on in themselves, how comfortable you make them feel, is all key takeaways. And then just to line up with what I said at the beginning, is that we all have a personal brand. We all have it, whether we like it or not. So shape it deliberately. Do with it what you can to utilize for your own growth, your own development, network growth. And yes, I am happy to take any questions off the back of that. I hope that was helpful. And yeah, I'm happy to take any questions if there are any.
Thanks, Georgina. If you would like to ask a question, feel free to use the raise hand, or if you don't want to come on mic, you can type it in the chat and we'll read it out. I like the fact that you mentioned the reputation word, Georgina, because that's the one thing I speak to people about that say, I don't feel like I need to personal brand, or I'm not trying to market something particularly, so why do I need to think about personal brand? I do try and reframe that and say, like, think of it as your personal brand is your reputation, and you're going to have the view of what you want your reputation to be, aren't you, always, whether that's as a kind, friendly person or a driven person, or whatever. So I think that it's a really good way to frame it, is in that, if you're not necessarily thinking about it as a personal brand marketing pitch, it's what do people think of when they think of you?
Exactly. Yeah, and it's something that we all have.
So we do have a hand up. Ivana.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, it's easy one. Yeah, thank you, Georgina, so much. I'm really happy you touched on the soft skill part, in terms of whether we're perfectionists, where we're driven, like whatever defines us, and use this as an engine. And my question is regarding LinkedIn posting, and I think a lot of us post on LinkedIn to be seen as a thought leader in the space where we operate. So it's quite related to hard skills and what we do and what we're good at in our job. But I did start posting content that is more about, I guess, yeah, soft skills. So for example, ambition and burnout, and how I'm navigating the finding balance between the two. So it's just if you have any advice on what makes us unique is are our soft skills instead of the job that we do. Do you have any advice on how to position this on LinkedIn?
Yeah, I think this is a great question, and I think it really depends on what you're looking to get out of the posting on LinkedIn. So if this is around, you mentioned around burnout and ambition, etc., and kind of finding that balance, I think that's something that so many people can relate to. So I think it's really up to you in terms of how hard you go with that. In terms of performance of posts, if we're talking really about metrics of things, I mean, the LinkedIn algorithm is changing all the time, which is difficult to keep up with. However, one thing that is significant is that LinkedIn actually scans your profile versus your post. So if you are posting something that is completely irrelevant to whatever is on your profile, then it won't necessarily match them up, because it wants to push out posts for people who are, say, experts in the field, for example. And with something that you mentioned, such as burnout and ambition, etc., that's obviously quite a difficult thing to convey, or maybe you don't want to convey that on your personal profile. So I think really it's reflective of what you want to get out of posting, whether that's expanding your network, so starting conversations with people who are maybe in a similar position. Maybe it's wanting to position yourself as a thought leader in the space, or maybe if you want to become a coach or something like that, then that again is a slightly different positioning. Or whether it's just a post to kind of say, you know, guys, this is how I'm feeling. I think we're all feeling it a bit. What do you think? So they're kind of three very different directions of travel for these kinds of posts. So yeah, it's really which way you want to go with that.
Thank you. Now, like you mentioned the new algorithm, I've been reading about that, and I think it makes a lot of sense. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, and it's constantly changing, and there's a lot behind comments and all that kind of thing. But at the end of the day, the most important thing is who has viewed your post, really, because that's you know, there's lots of silent readers who don't like or comment or anything like that. But the views are the most important thing, and you want to make it relevant to the people that who are viewing it, and for LinkedIn to push it out. So yeah, I hope that was helpful.
Sorry, I was muted there, Georgina. You did mention comments, so I think we should talk about commenting on LinkedIn as opposed to posting on LinkedIn and the differences. What my personal view is, especially if you are at the start of this journey, you're not going to have tons of followers. You're not going to have tons of connections potentially. So you might put loads of time and effort into creating really great posts that no one sees. So commenting is a really great way to leverage someone else's network. So if you're commenting on posts of people that already have lots of eyes on their posts, lots of followers, then that is bringing people into your profile, isn't it? And what's your view on
100%.
commenting?
Yeah, and just to build on that, so what I mentioned in my profile in terms of go in with intention. So I think commenting on someone's post just saying looks great obviously is one thing, but posting maybe, oh, really interesting approach, I also find, and then adding something that is of value, so then that really directs people more so to your profile. So really being intentional with comments and anything that is kind of publicly viewable from that perspective. Annie, it looks like you have a question.
Yes, my question is around what I'm actually experiencing right now is that the personal brand changes in time. Because as I mentioned in the beginning, that what I was kind of feeling and talking about 3 years ago isn't necessarily what I want to do today. And after hearing you talk, I had a thought that I probably have to kind of reconfigure the core of who I am. So if the content changes over time, it still kind of fits inside the core of my brand, essentially. But any other thoughts on that?
I mean, I think the pivot that you've had is still, there'll be so much more that is relevant from your previous role, probably than you think. So I think that's important. You could also, you know, maybe there's a community of people who have moved away from the career that you did into a new career, and I think that's really important. I think, you know, there's so much online around pivoting, and that it's never too late to change direction and change role, and I think you definitely don't need to change the core of who you are. I think that the significant point behind it is that this has been something that has been pivotal to you. So how you utilize that change as being part of that personal brand, I think it's not something to ignore. It's not like two separate, completely different personal brands. Of course, as you said, things will change, of course. You've got a different audience, different stakeholders, etc. But really utilizing that. So yeah, that's something that's really important.
Thank you.
We have a hand up from Pi.
You're muted, Pi.
Pi.
Yeah, thank you. I wanted to ask you, Gina, because I'm at this point, I'm focused on finding new ways for improving my networking, because so the point is that sometimes when we are entering into a new group, sometimes things are easier because we take this momentum of just presenting yourself within new persons you are just getting to know. But how to what are some themes that we can embrace when we are being collaborating within a special within your networking, and finding new ways to reinforce and how to if we are perceiving that this magic of start talking or interchanging ideas is now slowing down, knowing that if things are slowing down, if are that is good, and how to decide to take that step in inviting a peer to a session for collaboration, or those kind of things of reinforcing when you have been in a group for a while.
Yeah, if I understand the question correctly, is really in terms of how being part of networking groups for a while, how do you kind of move that forward to something that is valuable? Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah, it's totally what I so that's my question.
Sure. So I think you're absolutely right. Sometimes you can be part of networking groups, and it may, you know, can be a lot of effort, it can be time consuming, and maybe you're not getting from it what you hoped you would. I think firstly, vocalizing what you are interested in, there's no harm in it. I think if you want to collaborate with someone, you can always ask. The worst thing that they're going to say is no. I think often we can be in rooms of people and everyone is there for a similar reason and no one's actually acknowledging it. And as soon as someone says it, it's, oh, okay, yeah, me too, me too, me too. And it just took someone to say it. So I think just don't be frightened to speak up, to ask questions, to ask people what they want to get out of it, to suggest things. I think people are always open to that. I think more often than not, you'd be surprised by how many people are in the same boat and feel the same. And as I say, the worst that they can say is no, but that could also be a no for now, and you never know. At least you've put forward what you would like into the group. So as time moves on, as things change, people will remember that, and if it then becomes relevant, then they can reach out.
Yeah, it makes sense. Thank you.
No problem. Diane, you have hand up.
Oh, hi, thank you. You mentioned in your presentation about clarity of communication. So say you were just fairly new in a space and you had ideas about what you'd like to do, but you hadn't necessarily totally developed your brand or your specialism. So I guess that my question is around the messaging, how you can be clear, but still explore your specialism and then still speak to your potential audience, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's a really great question, and it's something that I still struggle with, honestly. So I think it's a really good question, and I think what I would say more than anything is that speaking from personal experience, I can be really guilty of trying to create the perfect message and something that's really going to resonate and that everyone's going to love and think is amazing. And to be completely honest, the posts that I have, or the content, however you want to frame it, the content that I have thought the most about and put the most effort and work in and thought it was, this great thing, has actually performed the worst, to be honest. So I think there's a lot to be said for being organic, being human, putting something out there. The worst case is that something doesn't perform that well. But I've tried to get away from being so in my head as to what I'm conveying. And of course, it still comes back to the point of the message has got to be clear, it's got to be concise and easily digestible. Those things are all still true, but not, delaying it so much or trying to refine something to make it perfect, because you're never going to know what's perfect. And often the things that perform best are things that are organic, things that people can relate to. I think the most corporate stuff on LinkedIn particularly performs the worst. People like to see the person behind. So branding, particularly on LinkedIn, is moving away from particularly the algorithm and what people engage with. People don't want to see kind of company information as much. They want to see the people behind the company, so they can actually relate to those people rather than it just being a nameless, faceless person. I'm sure you're in the same boat as me when you see people on LinkedIn that, like, I feel like I know because I've seen them post a lot and I've seen their face and heard their voice, etc. And it creates this familiarity and therefore comfortability behind it. So I think that's really important. So absolutely, clarity and messaging is important, but don't overthink it too much. Get content out there and then learn what performs and what doesn't, and then try and replicate what has performed, and not so much what hasn't.
I think that's very helpful. Thank you.
Sorry, Dan. I think that's a really important point there about your brand as opposed to your corporate brand. And in this day and age, people definitely buy from people rather than from companies. And a really great example I remember from another webinar we did was the lady that was delivering that presentation was talking about Stephen Bartlett, who most of us will know. If you look at Stephen Bartlett's LinkedIn profile, he has more than 3 million followers. So people are actively following him because they want to know what he has to say. If you look at his company that he says he works for on LinkedIn, that page has 4,000 followers. So people aren't following his company, people are following him. And that does mean that when you do maybe have pivots in your career and you go from being representing this business or representing this service, you don't have to necessarily reinvent the whole brand, because the brand is Georgina. It's not Georgina Coaching or Georgina Data Sales or whatever. So you'll still be able to maintain that followership. Annie, your hands up.
Yeah, I have a follow-up question regarding this topic. Do you think it's also the fact that people want to buy from people? Is it also true on B2B level? Because I personally think it is. But my company thinks that no, like our marketing team, they only create like very boring, very corporate posts on LinkedIn. And what I can see is that the engagement is like almost zero. Whereas I would think that if we talk about the people who work in the company, that would work so much better.
Definitely. No, I completely agree. It definitely still works from a B2B level. People absolutely buy from people. This is all relationships based. And even if you don't have relationships necessarily directly with your customer, if it's something that you're starting out doing, this is what I was mentioning with the brand part of, seeing people, understanding more about these people, you feel like you know them. So it's building kind of a parasocial sort of relationship, but that actually is a really positive thing. So yeah, I agree. I mean, all the kind of corporate stuff that I see on LinkedIn that is, pretty swirly images and, kind of profound statements, has its value for sure. Not saying that businesses shouldn't do it, but way more powerful is from the people, and it's more trusting as well. It's just more human, and I think particularly now more than ever we want to hear from humans more, not from robot bots or AI generated posts or images. So no, absolutely agree.
Ace, any more
other
questions?
I have one more, if nobody else
Sure.
has. So this is maybe not so much about the personal brand, but because you talked about networking as well, and I'm an introvert and I just pretend to be extroverted. So networking is still quite scary. Do you have any good tips or any kind of openings that will always kind of work well if you have to approach people?
Great question. So I think when I first started going to conferences and networking events, I felt exactly the same. I think particularly in tech, it can often be a room full of men and it feels quite intimidating, or you kind of question why you feel like you stick out like a sore thumb maybe. But I think the more you do it, firstly, the easier it gets. 99.9% of the time, people are nice. There's nothing you can say really that is someone's going to be rude to you. I think in terms of openers, I like just, what's brought you here today? What is it today that you're interested in? And then it gets straight into, what they're interested in, and then there'll be a link there that you can go from. But absolutely my go-to would be, if it's been a conference and there's been lots of talks, then maybe I would say, what was it from today that you've taken away? Things like that. So I think often also going into, sometimes at conferences, people can be in groups, which can be really intimidating. But again, 9 times out of 10, these people don't know each other. These groups have been formed. And it's not a bad thing to just, very politely say, excuse me, do you mind if I join? And go from there, and no one says no. So yeah, I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, I'll just reiterate that, Georgina. I think the key is be curious, ask questions about the other people, and hopefully that will form them to reciprocate and ask you the question. So if you say, why are you here today? They will ask you the question, and that's your chance to kind of go into elevator pitch. If you've prepped that kind of thing, you don't lead with the elevator pitch. You don't walk into a room and go, I'm Georgina and I do this, because we always go, what you talk about, you weirdo. But if you start the question with, like you said, what made you sign up for this event today, or what have you got out of it, they'll hopefully tell you something that leads on to something you can form a conversation from, or they'll reciprocate and give you the chance to go, this is my reason for being here. And then they'll hopefully
and it's very clear as well. You're absolutely right, Kevin. It's very clear when people do come in with a pitch, and they may be darting from person to person because you can tell that they've not got what they wanted from X person. So after 90 seconds, they're on to the next. That comes across so quickly, and I think that's so damaging. Networking events should be treated as exactly that, building your network. No one should be pitching anything. Obviously, if it comes up and people are interested, then that's very different. But it's being interested in other people being interested in you, and just building that relationship, essentially.
Yeah, I think it comes back to what you said at the start about adding value. So if you leave that conversation with them thinking, actually, that's something I want to follow up with because I will get something out of it, much more likely to take that forward than them leaving thinking Georgina needs me to contact her to help her with something. So yeah,
exactly. What's in it for them? Absolutely.
Yeah. Cool. We have another hand up from Elaine.
Hi there. I was made redundant last year after working for a company for 24 years, and thankfully I found a new role, and I start that in a couple of weeks. So I'm kind of coming from this as a perspective of, perhaps the things that, I became associated with over time in the last organization, and, just some tips you have for how I can really prepare myself, get into the right headspace, and think about, how I want to be known in this new organization.
Yeah, great question, and congratulations, Elaine. That's really great. So really good to hear. I think this is a really amazing opportunity. I think you mentioned the previous company you'd been with for 24 years, and I think naturally being somewhere, although that's a huge achievement in itself, I think naturally being somewhere for a certain amount of time, it can be quite difficult to sort of reposition yourself or rebuild yourself if people have known you for such a long time. So I think this is a really great and exciting opportunity for you to position yourself and your personal brand how you want it to be. So I think have a real think as to what you want your direction in the business to be, and think about how you can utilize what you can do to utilize that view of you, that perception. I think it's a really exciting thing. I think obviously I'm assuming something you haven't done for a long time, having been at a business for a long time, but I think that in itself is a huge building block. And you'll have seen so much over those 24 years in one business that you can definitely take into the next role, and people will be drawing on you for experience, and don't underthink how valuable that will be for them. So I think, just in preparation, think about how you want to be perceived, think about your real personal value add and how you can build on that and utilize it. And I think it sounds like a really exciting time.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, I think that is more challenging nowadays than it would have been 6 years ago, because you would probably, I know I'm making assumptions about the working environment and the working relationship and things, but you would almost definitely 6 years ago have been going into an office and being in amongst people, and naturally they will see the things that you're good at and the things where you can add value and build natural relationships with you. Sometimes if you're working remotely, you have to manufacture those opportunities. I don't have to put you on the spot, Georgina, but have you got any experience of or advice on creating those opportunities to kind of demonstrate your personal value that you would naturally do in a working environment beforehand?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Elaine, it would be great to understand, is your role, is it going to be in person? Are you going to be virtual? Is it hybrid?
So I'll be 4 days a week in the office, so I will have those kind of in-person opportunities available.
Great. Yeah, that's brilliant. And I think quite rare these days. So I think in terms of practical things that you can do, I think there's a lot around suggested ideas. I think often we can join new businesses and follow the way that things are being done, but no one is ever upset about being told, oh, actually this this could work. I've done it like this previously, or if they're trying to do something that you've done before that hasn't worked, again, to suggest that. I think that's really valuable. I think being in the office 4 days a week is brilliant. I think don't shy away from the kind of coffee chats and drinks. I think people tend to be generally pretty open to, could I just grab you for 20 minutes for a coffee? I think people are pretty open to that, to kind of learn a bit about their experiences and warm to them. So yeah, I think there's a lot to be said, particularly for being in person. I mean, my current role, I joined DataArt during the pandemic. It was obviously completely virtual. And I thought I did a pretty good job of building relationships just from calls, etc. But actually then when life changed and we went back to being in the office, I now totally see the stark difference of actually my relationships now, because online it is somewhat forced, whereas in the office it's much easier to just quickly, oh, can I pick your brains about this, or what do you think about this, etc. So I think really utilize that, because that's something that not everyone has, and it's really valuable.
Yeah, the other thing I would say, and this is going back to what Georgina said at the start of her answer, think about two things. Think about the things you want your new colleagues to know you for, and think about the annoying things that your old colleagues knew you for that you want to get away from. When we work with people getting like internal promotions and things, they sometimes find it hard to play that new role effectively because they've got too many relationships from their old role, and people think of them still doing that old job. So you've got a clean slate here. So you've got an opportunity now to actually mold the way that people perceive you without any of those other expectations around. Actually, Elaine's really good at this. I know it's not her current job, but I'll go and ask her for some help on this thing, where you might go, I don't want to get involved in that at the moment. So yeah, see it as definitely as a positive opportunity to kind of reinvent how you're perceived.
Brilliant, thank you.
Cool. Well, we're nearly at time, so unless anybody urgently has a question to ask, I would suggest that we say thank you to Georgina for her time. Thank you guys for attending. We will share the recording to this on the platform, so if anybody wants to watch it back and things, you're more than welcome to. Georgina, I assume we can attach the slides to that as well.
Yes, sure, absolutely.
Review them in their own time, but otherwise, have a lovely afternoon, people, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.